everyone. Hope you're having a great Wednesday. It is September 25th. I can see some of my favorite faces on here. Elena Mackey, Ray Coburn. What's up, guys? Liz Gonzalez, Derek Roser. Geez Louise, we've got such a great crowd today. I am super excited and pumped up for this particular session because I want you guys to know this is one of my passion points, is traditional sales. This is where I really got my start, and I feel like it is one of my deepest anchors. And what I mean by that is I feel like when you learn sales, truly learn it, and you study it like it's an art form, like you're learning an instrument, right? You learn how to sell. What happens is so many options in your world open up, right? Somebody hit me with a yes. If you've studied sales a little bit in your career and you feel like as you started to learn how to actually sell, things changed for you. You felt like your career got better. Hit me with a yes in the chat if you're one of those folks. And what's interesting for me is that, yeah, there we go. Kirby Vacuum. So yes, Ray says, Jeff says, yes, that's awesome. Absolutely, right? And what's fascinating is the more you study it, the better it gets. Plus you start seeing opportunity where you didn't even know opportunity existed previously. So we're going to dig into this a little bit today. We're going to talk about what closing is and what closing isn't. And then I have a nice beginner to intermediate, all the way to advanced list of closing strategies that I think are going to be easy to remember, that are deeply effective. And here's what I mean by closing, right? Because sometimes this is confusing. So let's dig into this. But actually, you know what? I love to ask people because this is really nice. So if you're on here and you're like committed to being engaged today and being really on the call, I love that, first off. And so hit me in the chat. What does it mean to close? What is that? We say those words. Did you close? Always be closing. What is closing? What does that even mean? I see Amy Legaspino on here today. That's awesome. Steve Heron, what's up? All right. So what does that mean to close? Somebody hit me back with a quick definition, though. See if somebody has one. It's a hard one, right? Like, this is one of those things where it's like, wow, I don't know. I didn't really think about that. I'm going to go ahead and give you, oh, here we go. 5 in escrow at the moment. Dang, dude. Well, that means you know how to close. All right, so check it out. Closing really is getting to a desired outcome. And I believe that, yeah, absolutely. Kiki Todi says, closing a potential seller means that they would sign a listing with you, right? It means getting to your desired outcome. Like if you're working with a potential seller, what do you want? You want them to list with you, not with the next person, right? You want them to sell. You want them to, maybe you're closing for a price reduction. Maybe you're closing them to list now instead of 6 months from now. There's always something. So when we hear this, always be closing, right? Zig Ziglar said it, and a lot of others, right? Zig's one of my guys. What's interesting is a lot of times what's really intended there is conceptually that we should be closing for something, right? We should be thinking about how do we close to get to the next phase of whatever it is we're doing, right? Hopefully the next thing that we want to have accomplished. And so we're going to talk about that today. There are a lot of things that keep people in an open mindset. Lexi always says, you have to open before you can close. And open means the person needs to be open-minded. They can't have friction or resistance with you. There are so many things we could talk about with body language, with word choice, with the way that you use your face or the way that you use your face, right? We can't just hope for the best on these things. It has to be a studied approach. Now, I will say some of you probably are in this amazing camp, and Lexi was one of these. Some people naturally have influence and impact, and they close pretty effortlessly. Here's what I found. If you're one of those people, you're like, I've never had a problem closing. Fantastic. Then today's even better for you, and here's why. If you take a person who's an intuitive closer, and then you teach them a studied approach, it's like taking somebody with talent as a musician and then putting them in a practice room. They get way better, way faster. It's incredible, right? You may be doing some things you didn't realize you were doing, but once you understand what those tools are, your arsenal gets 100 times better. And if you're one of those people where you're like, I hate having to ask for someone to sign a document. Ugh, sign here. It's really uncomfortable, right? I'm going to show you some ways to do that with no friction today, where you just feel great about it. So closing is really getting the other person to want what you want them to want. I'm going to say that again, getting the other person to want what you want them to want. That's an awesome thing. And by the way, I will just a quick kind of disclaimer. I believe that to be really a top level professional in sales, you should only do this stuff when it's best for the person on the receiving end. And what do I mean by that? So if you have a client and you're trying to get them to sign a document, that document should always be in their best interests. So I want to say that up front. This is not about manipulating people into doing anything that they don't want to do. It is about reducing friction, though. And a lot of times what happens, we don't even realize it, right? With the best of intent as salespeople, sometimes we create friction where we're not supposed to have any friction. And we're doing it because we're nervous that they don't want it, right? We're nervous that they don't want to sign the contract or whatnot. Alex Fernandez, hey, good to see you on the call. Krista Halewood, man, this is great. We've got a good crowd today. So it's really exciting, I think, to learn how do we reduce friction for people so that they can ultimately just get on board with what it is we're doing as a crew. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and see if I can get my screen share set up here because I have some slides for you. I always try to have some visuals. Some people are visual learners. That helps a lot. All right, so hey, Krista, good to see you. I always love it when people put their face on. So today we're talking about closing like a boss. What does that mean? I don't know. It's just a cool title. So this is this guy. That's who's talking right now. I'm a growth leader at eXp Realty. Co-founded this thing called Community. Before that, was running our production team. We were doing over 50 million a year, about 160 to 200 units. We would do real estate coaching, consulting. Still do that. And I love comedy and jazz, stand-up comedy. Love it, love it, love it. So today we're going to talk about closes. Here's what closing is not. Closing is not making people feel uncomfortable until they break and say yes. You create buyer, what is it called? Remorse when you do that. All right, is everyone familiar with that term? Buyer's remorse. Buyer's remorse is where you basically get somebody to say yes to something and then immediately they feel bad about it. Right? I've done that. I've paid for some big ticket stuff. I mean, really big ticket, where I'm sure that they were using high pressure sales on me and I broke and bought something. And then immediately I was like, oh, I probably shouldn't have done that. Right. I know people who bought like cars that way. And then they're like, I don't know. The salesperson really just kind of broke my kneecaps. And it's like, okay, that's not what we're talking about. Closing is just the natural reduction of friction, right? Remorse. Thank you, Ray. I appreciate that. Buyer's remorse. And so ultimately, we don't want them to feel bad. In fact, I want them to have a perception always that I'm in their best interest, I'm in their corner, and I'm helping them as a true fiduciary. I'm alongside, I'm going to fight this fight with you, maybe even for you, right? That's awesome. And I want them to feel great about that. So that the outcome that they're getting is great, and the outcome that I'm getting is desirable. Ultimately, some of this has to do with pre-qualifying your leads, understanding that the person really does need what you think that they need, right? It's not about convincing some person to, I don't know, buy a house when they have no business doing that. And so we're going to talk about that today. There are a number of really great strategies out there, and I'm going to go one by one, and we'll talk through how these work, why they are so deeply effective, and then also how do you start to combine these things so you start to get your own sales speak without ever feeling salesy, right? I think that's the common challenge with real estate salespeople is, I don't want to sound salesy. Great, so don't sound salesy. That doesn't mean you can't close. In fact, closing will. There was a research study a few years back, and I want to say it was by the founders of HubSpot, where they just found that people who closed at least 5 times, and I will say, for me, I close on an average like 15 to 20 times in a conversation, no problem. But for people who close 5 times, they're going to get 10 to 20 times more sales, which means more income, right? In an income-driven or results-driven industry, than people who don't close. 10 to 20 times as much money. So you're like, well, I made 100 grand last year. Well, how's $1 million or 2 million sound to you, right? That's the difference in learning this one skill set, because a lot of times we don't realize how much we're leaving on the table. And so we're going to get really deep into that today. And we're going to jump straight into some of these examples because I think it's really good. One of my very favorites, and this creates a huge reduction in friction if you learn it along the way, is what's called a tie down. So you can write these down, or I do give you a summary list at the end. And of course, we're recording this. And so we will also have this recording available in the community center for those of you who are a member with us already at the end of the call. A tie down close, and I'll give you these descriptions, so forth. I'm going to read this stuff to you so that you don't have to worry about all that, but don't feel like you need to screenshot everything. I'll even distribute the slide deck afterwards if you guys want it. But you're going to use leading questions that naturally prompt a yes. I use these all the time. In fact, I don't even know how to turn this off. And in fact, Lexi doesn't know how to turn this off, which makes it funny. Sometimes we're counterselling each other if we disagree on something. Really, it's like two rams ramming horns together. But it's great. And tie downs they're not the ultimate close. This isn't necessarily the way that you get to a yes on a listing contract or a buyer agency agreement. However, this close gradually, look at that, why it works. It gradually builds momentum by getting the client to agree to a series of small points along the way, which progressively makes it harder for people to say no. I don't know if you know this, but if somebody says yes to 5 questions in a row, the 6th question is disproportionately more likely, it doesn't matter what you ask, that they'll say yes, simply because they're habitually saying yes. Now, what's interesting is tie downs tend to, not always, but tend to, and you'll notice I put them at the beginning, start with what's called a conjunction, which is wouldn't, don't, can't, shouldn't. Those are those words where we use an apostrophe inside the word, like when we shorten up should not, because we don't say should not we go to the store, we say shouldn't we go to the store, right? But it means should not we go to the store, which sounds really, really dumb. Like, Krista, if I said to you, should not we go over to Taco Bell, you'd be like, wow, Jeff is having a stroke right now. I don't know why he's speaking so weird, like it's in Shakespeare or something. And so what's fascinating, though, is that tie downs are actually an inversion. They're a form of an inversion close, where if I say, wouldn't you, don't you, wouldn't you agree? Doesn't that make sense? Don't you think? Can't you tell? Shouldn't we? Isn't there? Those conjunction frames are inversions. So the right answer is no, but what people say is yes, or sure, or I guess, yeah, sounds good, or I don't know. Like it creates a lot of cognitive disruption because as a form of a question, it's actually confusing. Now, we don't interpret it in English, by the way. All of this stuff today is in English. It doesn't work in other languages, as it turns out. There are other closes in other languages, but all of this stuff is super contextual to English. But if I'm talking with somebody and I say, listen, what we know is that people who get on the market right now, still in September, are going to beat the lag that we start to experience in winter. So if you're really trying to get as much money out of this as possible, it seems like getting it listed sooner than later makes sense, don't you think? Don't you think would be the tie down? Or can't you tell, or shouldn't we? I could pop any of those. And the other person might just go, mm-hmm, or seems like, or oh, maybe, what we're trying to do is just to get some type of a head nod and some positive kind of connection with the other person. For me personally, if I'm in a face-to-face sales component or environment, I'll nod, raise my eyebrows, smile slightly, and say the tie down. And I know that seems weird and very practiced, and I will tell you, it is very practiced, and it works like fire. So if I was talking with Ed right now, I can see my buddy Ed Burdick on the call. Hey, Ed, I would say, hey, blah, 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 shouldn't we? And Ed might just kind of naturally see that I'm nodding. And what I find happens with about, 19 out of 20 people is that if I'm nodding, their head starts to nod. And they will mirror with what I'm doing. They start tracking with it. If I raise my eyebrows, they become slightly more open and aware. I'm showing them the whites of my eyes, which is very disarming, as it turns out, for humans. It shows me being a little bit more vulnerable than if I squint my eyes and tighten my face, right? That seems, whoa, what's going on with Jeff? It looks like he wants to fight. So I'm sending some physical signals, which are positive, and then I smile. Smiling is very disarming. I love that, right? And it also tends to change my voice. By the way, I'm not always like this. If I just resting Jeff face, right? I know there's a resting other face thing that people put out there, but if I just resting Jeff face, RJF, then I would just be here. This is my resting face. And I could talk like this, but it is very boring to look at, and it is not very exciting to be on the receiving end of, right? So for me, I tend to do what I call activating the energy in my face. It's an okay thing to do. It doesn't make you fake. It simply makes you easier to look at. Guess what? People who you watch all the time on television, whether they're news anchors, politicians, hopefully not, not right now, geez Louise, or maybe actors, actresses, guess what? They're being aware of the impact of their face. It's appropriate for you to think of yourself as being on stage. The last ones I have down here are yes, right, and fair enough. Those are not conjunction-based tie downs, but they work all the time. Yes, I can just pop that one on. Okay, that's another good one. You can put that on the list, right? That's probably my favorite. I use it constantly, right? It's very easy to pop on the end of a sentence, right? And what's interesting is the other person may not even say anything, but in their head they go, right? It's crazy, right? So that's where I can start putting those in. I would recommend you get a nice little list of tie downs. You put it on a thing right on your wall in front of you. And when you're talking to people, just start seeing if you can end with one of these frequently in your conversation. The other person will not notice it. It goes by very, very easily with the ear. But tie downs are absolute magic. I can't tell you how much I use these. Probably my number one. Why? Because if I pepper them throughout, I'm getting constant head nods, constant yes. Then when I get to something that matters, like seems like we should go ahead and get all the paperwork filled out, don't you think? That one matters. I need them to say yes right there. If I've been doing this all along, right, then it's going to work. Okay, so there's tie downs, tie downs, tie downs. We're going to use those a lot. Okay, this is, by the way, I've got about 20 of these today, so this is going to be great. Hypothetical close is my next favorite. And I have to tell you guys, this one's amazing because people love happy face activate. I love it. Thanks, Ray. People absolutely love it when you give them permission to be negative. How many people know this? In the English language, are there more positive words or negative words? Somebody tell me in the chat. I feel like I kind of already hinted at the answer, but does anyone know? Positive words or negative words in the English language, just in general. Like if we counted up all of the positive words and we counted up all of the negative words, the descriptors, there are, as it turns out, there's like 3 times as many. Yeah, thank you, Colleen Rayburn. Awesome. There are 3 times as many negative words in English than positive words, right? Why? Because we've trained our brains over time to look for danger, right? We used to live in caves, and the females at the time were gatherers, and the males would go out and murder something. That was our job, right? Like, or get murdered usually. That was also our job. So we had to leave the cave, and hopefully there was not some type of a, I don't know, some mammoth or something going to stomp us out, or some saber-toothed tiger going to bite our face off, right? So we were always kind of on the lookout for something that could be. So as language started to develop, we believed also humans could represent danger. As it turns out, for the longest time, we all just kind of killed each other as a way to claim resources and territory. So everything was all about like, we got to look for danger. So what does that mean? People's natural response to things is to be what? Positive or negative? Well, if you just look at the language, chances are they're going to be negative. So if we can give them permission and an appropriate channel, and we set up the frame for them to be negative, we've given them permission to do what they want to do anyway, but now it's within our frame or our boundaries or our fence that we set up. It's kind of like my dogs. Like my dogs love to run around and be crazy. But if I took the fence and I just opened the gate on our property and I just let them run, they'd adios. Like they're just going to, they're going to run and go crazy, right? Sometimes our clients do that. So, but if we have the fence all set up and the boundaries are appropriate, then they can say no within those boundaries and it still works. Let's show you how to do it. This is awesome. And this is one of my very favorites. This is called the hypothetical close. And this one, it allows, we can use it in a couple different ways. I'm going to show you how to use it in a negative frame. I'll show you how to use it in a positive frame. And then I'll also show you how to use it where it's just pure hypothetical. It's really interesting. But this is creating a hypothetical of the other person's ideal outcome. And then we're connecting it to a question about our desired approach. So if I was talking with Krista right now, I could set up a hypothetical about what it is that we're talking about. We'll look at these examples in a second, but this close helps the buyer mentally take ownership, which is important, by the way. We always say if they author it, they'll have authority, they'll own it, right? And ownership is important because then they know later on that they made this decision, not that you twisted their arm into it. And it also helps them to visualize the benefits of a product or service. So I love to always start these with if you were to. I don't know why we didn't bold that last one. Let's fix that. Boom. If you were to. Krista, if you were to buy a home, when would that be? Now, what I'm doing is I'm just reducing the friction threshold. Now, if I'm going to say, hey, do you want to buy a house right now? She might say no. But if I say, oh, okay, well, but if you were to buy a home, when would that be? I could ask that question immediately after she said no. And this is how we can allow people to say no, by the way. This is that negative framing. I know that she's going to say no. Hey, do you want to sell your house right now? No, definitely not. Awesome. I'm curious though, if you ever were to sell your house, listen to that. There's the pivot. But if you were to sell your house, is there like a magic number that you guys would want to get? Or is there a number that's big enough where you guys would change your mind right now? Look at that. I can say that with a big smile and like, ooh, come on, tell me what your juicy number is. Come on, right? And I don't have to say it like this. Listen, you don't have to be me, guys. Be yourself always. I'm going to show you who I am naturally when I'm in these types of environments because you can see that. And this is how I act, right? And it is absolutely true and authentic to me. It's just me with a little extra energy. I do bring energy to all of my conversations because I believe that people feed off of energy. And if I give them low-level energy, then they're going to give me low-level energy back. And that means we're going to be really sleepy and boring together. Right? That's awful. And I'm not bringing much enthusiasm, which means I won't get much enthusiasm. You get what you give. So if you give low energy, you'll get low energy. If you give low enthusiasm, you'll get low enthusiasm and excitement and all of the things you actually want back from the client. You want them to be excited. Come on, to work with you? Look at that. Of course they should want to work with you, but they won't want to if you're boring and awful, right? That's a tie down, by the way. Okay, hypothetical close. If you were to buy a new home, what features would you want? That's fun. Hey, if you were to sell your house, how much would you want to make? I've had people while door knocking, by the way. Yeah, we're not looking to, no, thanks for coming by. Right, the normal, like get off my front porch, kid. That approach, I get it, right? And I'll say, hey, listen, I get it. I totally understand. But listen, we've got a few people who are kind of looking around the area. If you ever were to sell your house, just out of curiosity, I'll keep it in the back of my mind. Is there a magic number that would actually get you guys kind of excited to move? And I had somebody tell me a number one time, and I said, listen, let me grab your number because I may actually have something for that. I grabbed their number. I made one phone call later that day and we put their house under contract that afternoon. They didn't think that they were selling. We never even went on the market. Signed a listing contract, single property, boom, boom, buyer. Let's get it done, right? So, and I double-ended the deal. Now, is that awesome? I don't know, but for me, it sure as heck was. And all of it came because I didn't accept their first answer. In fact, I knew that their first answer was going to be no. Everyone's first answer to that is no. Look. Have you ever been in a shoe store? By the way, I'm a shoe whore. I love shoes, boots in particular. Oh my gosh, you guys, I love shoes, right? I just do. I don't know why. I'm like straight guy who likes shoes. It happens. All right. So here's what's interesting though. I go into a shoe store and if the person walks up to me, they say, are you looking to buy shoes today? What's my answer going to be? Nope, just looking. Thanks so much. Like buzz off. That's my answer, right? Is it because I am not going to buy shoes? No, I'm going to buy shoes. I love shoes, right? I like a lot of stuff. I can also go to a computer store and drop a few grand like an idiot. So guess what? Why am I saying that? I just want my space. It's my instinctive response. I am putting up my defenses, right? So why do we need to know that? Because it's guaranteed that's what the other person's going to say. So if you know it, allow them to say it. Who freaking cares? Know it and get excited when they say it because now you've got a pivot. That's what the hypothetical close is for. So somebody comes into your open house. Hey, are you looking to buy a house today? No, we were just driving by. Oh, fantastic. I'm curious though, if you guys were to buy a house, when would that be? Or if you were to, look, you could do it later in the conversation. That might be too awkward, like as your second sentence. But you see what I'm saying? It gives you a pivot. So you could talk to them a little bit. Oh, fantastic. Well, it's a great neighborhood. Are you guys familiar with the neighborhood? Well, we're kind of getting to know things. Curious, where are you from? Oh, around here. Fantastic. Well, listen, if you guys ever were to buy a house, what do you think would prompt that, or when would that be? I can ask that really comfortably. And that person would say, well, we're still kind of toying around with things. Listen to what I just heard. Now they are a buyer. Hey, that's funny. 10 seconds ago, they weren't. By following up, by closing. This is what closing really is. Closing is stripping the layers off the onion, let's call it. I'm a Shrek fan, right? Onions have layers. So we're going to go ahead and take those layers off the onion until we get down to something awesome, right? You don't want to eat that outer part. That's gross. All right, the no close. Since we're getting the buyer comfortable to say no, let's talk about this. This is getting our buyer to say no. We want them to say no. It's called an inversion close, right? There's another one that we have later called the offended close or the offense close. Does the same thing. Okay, the no close though, and this is I gave my favorite one here. So this is getting the buyer to say no as a means of gaining control and comfort in the conversation. This is very, very common. And I think Oren Klaff, Chris Voss, they like a lot of the kind of big guys out there tend to really point at this as a key strategy. Why? Because people want to say no. They don't want to say yes. Saying yes is what high pressure sales does. Don't you think? There's a tie down. Wouldn't you agree? There's another tie down. But if you were to use a close, wouldn't you want to use the no close? That's a hypothetical close. So the no close, would it be crazy to think that we should get started sooner than later? That's my favorite. Would it be crazy to think that whatever you want to put after it? Or would it be crazy for us to go ahead and get started? Or would it be nuts for us to go ahead and get this paperwork together before I head out of here? And that way I got something to work on in the meantime while you guys kind of figure things out on your end. Something like that. Really comfortable. Again, giving them full autonomy. But what's nice is what's the affirmative response to that? The answer is no. Would it be crazy? No, it's not crazy. So I'm giving them permission to say no, but when they say no, it means yes. This is an important concept in this one. And we cover two closes that are like this, the no close and the offense close. In fact, let me change the order here because I just realized I should probably have put that one way up here. I'm going to pull it up. Hold on. No close. So I'll go straight to the offended close. So apparently we can't spell today. People tend to say no to implied offense. This is the other form of a no close. So this gives the prospect a chance to say no, clarifying their lack of offense, right? If I'm talking with someone, I can see Jackie on this call. What's up, Jackie Twyman? Awesome agent. Hey, man, it's good to see you. So listen, if I was talking with Jackie and I'm like, hey, Jackie, would you be offended if I gave you a call next week? What's she going to say? Naturally, most people in that moment would be like, no, that's fine. No means yes, you can call me. No means yes. It's very weird. If you really think about it linguistically, meaning having to do with the language of it, it's weird. We're asking a question where when they say no, it gives permission. But that is how the English works. It's why we can use this so effectively. This is my absolute favorite inversion, just means negative means positive, close. Would you be offended if I kept in touch? Would you be offended if we took a look at the paperwork so we can get down to the fun stuff? Think about that with seeking for buyer agency contracts right now. Would you be offended if we knocked out this paperwork stuff? I hate this stuff, so we can go ahead and get down to the fun stuff. Does that seem awful when I said it? Does it seem like, oh, Jeff is such a salesy guy? No. Listen, I promise you, if any of you were working with me, you'd be having a great time. We'd be smiling. We'd be looking at things seriously, but also I try not to over serious stuff. People treat their life like it's life and death. Life is life. Death is death. You can separate them. So here's what's nice. Would you be offended if the thing you want? It's a very easy formula. Would you be offended if we went ahead and got this signed now? No? Okay, sounds great. Me neither. All right, let's keep going. I love this one, by the way. Use this constantly. My very, very, very favorite way to use this, though, is permission to keep in touch. Would you be offended if I kept in touch or gave you a call next week? One of those two. Those are my very favorites. That's why I put them first there. Okay. Are these making sense? Hopefully these are making sense. And I see people hitting me up in the chat. So by the way, unmute yourselves if you want to. Colleen says she loves shoes as well. That's awesome. If you are the type of person where you don't think about closing because you're intuitive, I know some of us are intuitive. That's awesome. I'm not, by the way. I am not an intuitive salesperson. I'm an intuitive performer because I've been performing my whole life. So I'm used to being in front of people, but closing was new to me. So I was like, oh crap, I got to learn this. I gotta help reduce friction on the other side. Now, I will say early in grad school, I did have the opportunity to get some sales training because I worked for a telemarketing firm, and that was mostly high pressure sales. And so I learned how to close the wrong way, I'll call it. And so when I got belly to belly and I realized that people were people and you want to take good care of them, then guess what? Then you learn the right way to close, which is really just reducing friction and helping people to make the decision you can tell they want to make. It's in their best interest. It's going to benefit them and their family, not you. Right? Your needs should come second. And if you take care of people, guess what? Your needs will be met. If you don't take care of people, guess what? You'll burn forever. All right. It's not good. You don't want to do that. Thanks, Liz. I appreciate the smile. At least I know you're listening. All right. Guess what? Let's go back over to check this next one out because I love this next concept. This is called frame control. And frame control is, or some people call it reverse qualification. It's basically where I'm making the other person apply to work for me effectively, or to work with me, I guess, is a better way to frame that. Hey, Doug, I can see Doug Hannum on here. It's good to see you, buddy. So guess what? In the frame control close, what I'm really doing is I'm going to establish authority by controlling the narrative and making the client come to me. That may all sound like a bunch of fancy blah, blah. So I'll show you how it works in a second. But when you set up this frame, you position yourself as the expert. Too often, guys, I see some seriously powerful, like just monster agents on here right now. A lot of you know, agents many times diminish themselves by kind of almost asking, can I please work for you? Can I please work for you? Flip it. Get the client to hear that they should be applying to work with you. Listen, my lawyer, my CPA does not give two flying craps if I'm their client. And if I call up and I'm fussy, they will tell me where to go and how to get there. And they will fire me so quick it makes my head spin. Why? Because they're the deal and I get the privilege of working with them. And here's what's interesting. Humans want what it's harder to have. Let me repeat that. I need to do this over here. Humans want what they believe it is harder to have. All of us. I'll give you an example. A rock. A rock is really an easy thing to have. I can go outside, I can pick up a rock, and now I can own a rock. I can paint a smiley face on it, and it could keep me company. But I'm not really worried about whether or not I can get my hands on a rock because they're easy to get. What's hard to get? Let me ask you, what's hard to get? I don't know, a yacht. I don't know if I want a yacht. Actually, that's funny because they just eat gas. But something, $1 million, $10 million, right? That's harder to get, or we perceive that it's harder to get. And as a result, do we want it more than we want the rock? Would you trade the rock for $1 million? Yes, of course. And so by making yourself seem harder to get, interestingly, and I know this is counterintuitive, people will want to work with you more, not less. Let's go into how that works. By the way, it's a delicate dance. You may want to practice this one before you start being like, deal, you got to apply to work with me. They're going to be like, okay, I'm out. So you have to finesse this a little bit, but we'll talk about it. So for me, if I'm positioning this around like my team, even our organization, listen, we don't work with just anyone. It's just got to be the right fit on both sides. You understand? Now, by saying that, what I'm saying is I'm not applying to work with you. You're applying to work with me. So I didn't say it directly, but I can say it more directly. Look, Liz, let's just take a look at things and let's see if you're a good fit for our program. Okay? I can say that with a big old smile on my face. And those words will float by, especially when you're not reading them. Those words will float by in the auditory kind of conversation that they're happening. And the other person will say, sure. But what's interesting is I've actually just increased my power and authority in the conversation. And I have, by definition, decreased theirs. And Zig Ziglar used to say, every conversation or every sales encounter is two salespeople working against each other, you and the prospect. One of you is going to outsell the other. You're selling them that they need to work with you. They're selling you that they don't need what you have. And one of you will prevail. Who's the better salesperson? Zig Ziglar used to say it that way. I believe that to be true. So if we look at it this way, let's take a look at what we do and see if you're a good fit to work for us to work together. Now, if I say that with a nice lilt to my voice and I smile, it's not a big deal. Now, if I sound like a jerk when I say this, it will burn the house down instantly. Here's how that sounds, just so you can hear it wrong. Let's take a look at what we do to see if you're a good fit to work with us, or what I can't even do with this without smiling. Okay, that I sound like a turd, and the other person's going to be like, no, that's gross. But if I say, let's just take a look at what we do and see if you're a good fit for us to work together. That is an application script, meaning they're applying to work with me. Happens constantly in internet sales now, by the way. If you look at the verbiage on most web landing pages that are selling physical or digital products, conceptual services, most of them say, go ahead and fill this out. And what they'll do is a lot of times they do this through process of a survey. Have you ever taken a survey? And in the survey, it's like, do you do this? Do you do that? What are they really doing? Qualifying you to see if you're qualified to even talk to them. Fascinating. But by qualifying yourself, you're going further and further down the pipeline. And in turn, you're actually raising your hand and you're saying, would you take a look at me and see if I'm a good fit? You're giving them the authority to make that decision for you. So frame control works really, really well. I strongly endorse it. I do this all the time. My very favorite script, though, is let's just take a look at how we work and see if we're a good fit to work together. That's the way I'm not even looking at the screen, so I could make sure that I would frame it the way that I would normally say it. Okay, this is very effective, and you take control of that frame. I talked earlier about the fences. This kind of sets up the fences. The person still has plenty of autonomy to roam around, right? But it reminds me of Southwest used to say, you now have permission to roam about the country, right? They didn't say the world because they didn't fly to the whole world. So they set the frame, they gave you permission to make decisions, right? Love it. Not exactly a close, but kind of. Kind of interesting, actually, that they used it that way. So that's frame control. Next, urgency. Now, what's interesting is if you study some of the famous psychologists out there who have talked historically about sales, one of the most famous is a gentleman by the name of Robert Cialdini. We mention him a lot on these types of trainings because he wrote what is arguably the kind of pinnacle text on influence of humans. And I would really recommend actually all of his stuff. But he says that there are 6 guiding principles, and one of them is urgency. I'll leave it to you to go research the others. ChatGPT can give you a full summary right now if you want. But Robert Cialdini, Cialdini. And I think he works as a professor at Arizona State University. But what's fascinating is he says urgency is a key indicator. Urgency, scarcity, there's a bunch of these things, right? We've only got one left is a great way to sell a car. Well, but I want the red one. Well, it's the last one on the lot. They may have a whole garage, 35 of them in the back. That's dishonest. Don't do that. But I believe that it does happen. It's why do they do that? Scarcity. What is urgency? This sale expires this evening. So if you guys want the 40% discount, we can give that to you today if you buy now, right? That's kind of the lowbrow version of this. Where I use this is helping people to understand market timing. Understanding market timing. So you guys know, when is the best time to buy or sell a house? Anybody?
Today.
Amen.
20,
Yes.
20 years ago.
Well, even better, right? Thank you. Today's great. 20 years ago is the best. Who was that? Desiree?
Yeah.
Awesome. Hey, Desiree Klein. Awesome. So yeah, today is awesome. 20 years ago was the best, right? Now, probably not to sell. Definitely to buy, right? Buying today is great. Buying 20 years ago is better. So if somebody's like, we're going to wait to buy until the blah, 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 all I know is they are actually damaging themselves, right? We've got all sorts of silly little kind of nursery rhymes around it, like date the rate and marry the house and whatever, all sorts of things, right? That's great. But what are we really saying? If you wait, you what? Lose money. That's what we're saying. And if you're going to sell this house and buy another one, guess what? You're going to lose money if you do it 6 months from now. There's always a way to exploit the rate advantage of the current market, or the bind up of the current market. Competition is something I think about a lot. So I'm going to talk about how to talk through this with people, but we're going to create urgency for them to act now. Why? Because if somebody says they're going to act 6 months from now, has anyone ever had anyone tell them they're going to do something in 6 months and then that person does not do that thing in 6 months? Right? It's not because they're a liar. It's not because they're a bad person. It's not because they hate you. It's because that's what happens with everybody. Right? Anybody remember 6 months ago? Barely. Right? I barely remember what I had yesterday for dinner. So it's very challenging to remember what I said 6 months ago to some sales encounter. Truth be told, what do I need to be doing? I need to create urgency and help people to get in the market now. Let's do it now, right? And there's also soft sells. There's kind of intermediary stages. Like sometimes people need to wait 3 months. Larry's not retiring for 3 months and we can't possibly get to da-ba-da-ba-da. Great, let's go ahead and take that. Let's get a listing signed today. That way I can go ahead and pre-market this, blah, 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 blah. And then we can go live on the MLS in 3 months. Something like that. I've done that before. That's a great kind of intermediary step to get them to make an action now. And many times, if you have a good network, you can actually get the property sold prior to them heading out. Observe all their timelines. They get a better deal. Everything's less stress for everybody. It's great. So let's talk about how to do this. Going back over 2 slides. All right. So we're going to use time-sensitive elements to motivate quick decisions. We can leverage fear of missing out, like FOMO, especially for clients who tend to procrastinate, which I've experienced as basically all of them. So there's a lot of people shopping in this neighborhood this month. They're just simply not going to be there come October, right? That's a really low-brow kind of version of this. A lot of times I like to use seasonality. Like people are like, we're going to wait until winter. This is an easy one. Winter is coming. So that's awesome. I totally understand. Just out of consideration, in winter, there are a lot fewer buyers. Now, but what if it's winter and they're like, we're going to wait till summer? Oh, I totally understand that. But, come summer, there's going to be a lot less of a competitive advantage than you have right now because there's so few buyers. So I wouldn't recommend that we sell in summer, or I wouldn't. In fact, I think I cover this a little bit later. All of those market-driven approaches, you can speak to why a buyer would not want to wait till summer and not want to wait till winter. You can speak to why a seller would not want to wait till summer and not want to wait till winter. All 4 of those possibilities are real and are possible to speak to. You just don't speak to the corollary, right? Are they honest? Yes, because acting now is generally the best idea in real estate. Now, I will say, if there is some compelling, overwhelming reason I'm not thinking of right now, always do what's right for the client. But creating some urgency helps people. It might not be the ultimate close, but you might say, you know what? There are 2 other properties similar to yours that are dramatically overpriced in your neighborhood right now. It should actually help yours to sell. I would say we go ahead and get on the market while you still have that competitive advantage. Your house is nicer and we position it at an appropriate price. You're going to pop off the market simply because of the perceptions of the marketplace. It's a beautiful thing. That may not be there later if we wait. So I would think, let's go ahead and get started now. Sound good? Don't you think? Right? Use a tie down there. That's no problem. So it's creating urgency, helping the person to understand why acting now is what? In their best interest. People are always wondering, what's in it for me? You're going to make more money. That's a pretty good one. All right. Assumptive close. This is more of a mindset or even a lifestyle than anything else. Assumptive close is where I assume we're working together rather than asking for permission, right? What's interesting about an assumptive close is that I can skip over yes/no questions straight into statements of alignment. What is a statement of alignment? I'll show you in a second. So we would assume the buyer, or in this case, the prospect, could be a listing, could be a buyer, has made the decision to proceed as if they've agreed already. We just assume they just said yes to working with you and now speak as though they just said yes, but skip over that question completely. What do you mean, Jeff? I'll show you. But why does it work? It lowers the resistance completely because people don't like to have to correct you. And it just seems like a natural next step. People tend to just follow the path of least resistance. So here's how this could sound. Yeah, Tammy, absolutely. Let's just knock out the paperwork so we can go ahead and get photos ordered and get you moving fast, right? That's on the listing side. Or let's go ahead and knock out the paperwork so we can get out there and take a look at some houses today, right? That's, what did I not say? Do you want to work with me? Right? That is that. Does everyone remember when you first had your first crush in like elementary school? And you're like, I like you. Do you like me? Circle yes or no. It's horrifying. I gave one of those to Nina Gonzalez. That was my first little lovey-dove, right? And I sent it off with her because I'm an idiot, by the way. I sent it off with her on our last day of school before summer while she went home. And then I never heard from her again. It was awful. She still hasn't responded. And so, how rude. Why? Because circling yes or no is dumb. It just is. It's low level, kind of juvenile way to ask something. What is more assumptive? If you think about the way that you actually naturally engage in relationships with people, you don't say, do you like me? I like you. Circle yes or no. You say, hey, let's go to the movies on Friday. Sound good? Right? Doesn't matter. If I'm not, we could be talking romantic relationship. We could be just talking building friendships. Hey, we're going to go to such and such for dinner. You guys want to join us? Or you guys should join us. Or we're going to be there at 7. Should we hold your seat? Or what do you want for an appetizer? That's super assumptive, right? This is what's nice about this is the more assumptive it gets, the more likely the person is to agree to the behavior. So if you simply assume they're already working with you and you speak as if, you act as if, that's what Jordan Belfort calls it, act as if, that person will naturally align and that will benefit you dramatically in your sales approach. This is super effective, guys. Now, I will tell you real quick, breaking it up with the slides and stuff here, that people still buy in winter. I'd hate for them to miss your house. Absolutely, Joanna, love that in the chat here. Okay, the next close is something that if you do not know this one, this is absolutely classic. Sometimes called a slot close or a choices close, a bunch of things. I tend to call it a slot close. Some people call it A-B close, just meaning choice A, choice B. What the basic concept is here coming up is that we're going to give the prospect, whether they're a buyer, a seller, another agent, whatever it is that you're trying to persuade, we're going to give them 2 options, but we get to control the options, right? Easiest way to win a game, write the rules, right? So when I give a person 2 options and both of those options lead back to an outcome I'm happy about and I believe would be in their best interest, then in that situation, that's a very effective closing stance where they still feel like I have not stripped them of their options, right? If I come to Krista and I say, sign here, let's get started today, that feels like she only has one option. It's my way or the highway. That feels very nasty and high pressure. Is it effective? Yes. Turns out it is actually fairly effective. You gotta have some guts for that one. It's fairly effective. It's just high pressure and people tend to feel positioned and cornered and you're going to face more remorse. But if I show up and I give her 2 options, both of those options are very acceptable to me and get us to the same finish line, she'll choose one of the options feeling like her autonomy was not stripped away. All right, let's go back to this and take a look how it works. You just, here we go, slot close. All right, both of them lead to a sale or a close. A close could just mean the next step in your sales pipeline, okay? Why does this work? Well, when you give them 2 options, you don't have to shut them down and you steer the client toward making a decision rather than just saying no or pumping the brakes or backing off or saying, I need to talk to my husband, wife, sister, pastor, mother-in-law, I don't know, right? Everyone's got some mythical third party that they have to go check with before they can say yes to something. That's what happens when somebody feels cornered, is that they come up with a thing that they have to check with. Well, let me check with my even business partner, right? That's a crazy one. All right, how do we use it? Krista, do afternoons or weekends usually work best for us to meet? Awesome. What have I really said? We're going to meet. Let's just figure out when. That's way, that would be super uncomfortable if I came to a prospect and I said, I'm going to meet with you, right? Well, now we're going to identify a time. They're like, whoa, you should get out of my house or off my phone or whatever. That's awful. What time works best for us to meet? 4:30 today or 3:30 tomorrow? Awesome. 2 options. What are both of them lead to? Us meeting. What's more important to you, selling your home yourself or making the most money when you sell? What's interesting in that one is I know that there's a right answer, wrong answer dichotomy. That one's a little bit more advanced. That might be for sale by owner. Okay. And what's the wrong answer? Well, selling my home myself, because what I'm saying is that I value selling it myself over making more money. That that isn't right. And we know that intuitively it's not the right answer. So what would any logical, at least, person say? Making the most money, obviously, but I can't afford to do that with all the commission. Well, let's talk about that because I'd love to help you net the most money as well. I'm a top line expense. Sounds like you're focused on your bottom line. We could go straight into all that scripting. It'd be great, right? It's great. Good stuff. But slot closes are awesome. I tend to use them mostly when I'm setting up a time to meet, and I skip over asking, do you want to meet with me, right? Do you like me? Check yes or no. Do you love me? Silly. And so instead of asking that question, I'll just say, listen, that sounds great. Sounds like we should meet. What time works best for you? 4:30 today or maybe later tomorrow? That's a specific, non-specific slot close. All I'm doing is really giving them two options. They get to pick one. It's great. I love this so much. And this may not feel like, when you thought about closing coming into this call today, you may not be thinking like, well, just giving a person two options is closing. Of course it's two options is always closing, right? We could even eliminate something. Let's talk about that. This is called the takeaway close. And so a lot of times people might argue on value with you about something, specifically when you're maybe trying to take a listing, you've presented your value proposition. Hopefully you have a value stack. What do I mean by that? We do this and that and this and that and this and that. They can see the perceived value of each of those items. What's the most common objection in taking a listing? Well, probably commission, arguably, right? Like that's one of the more common objections. Like, well, what do you charge? By the way, you'll notice your client generally is very uncomfortable to ask that question. Has anyone ever noticed that person is uncomfortable when they ask that question? I want to point that out to you to let you know they're uncomfortable asking that question. That's a good thing. That sets up exactly the right environment for you to succeed. So don't lose momentum right there. Just be aware they're uncomfortable. That's fantastic. They didn't want to have to ask this question. The quicker you can make it done, the better. So here's one option, and this is called a takeaway close. It's a classic sales approach. And this is simply, people tend to want things more when they feel like they might lose them. And the sense of loss, you just stacked up all this amazing value that we put your property on 700 plus websites through our premium list hub account. By the way, EXP does that for you. We position it on multiple social media sites. We've got X number of followers, and then we're going to retarget, and we're going to position it in multiple states. And holy guacamole, we're doing all this great stuff. Professional photography and a Matterport walkthrough, and we take photos from outer space, and I don't know what you're doing, right? Whatever it is, professional photo retouching, all the great stuff that you're doing that adds value to the consumer when they're listing with you. And so then they say, well, would you be willing to drop your commission? Well, listen, if you don't need the premium marketing package, we could leave it out, no problem. But just to be clear, that means we'd need to take this, that, this, and that, and this out. My experience has been that these are the things that are going to get you top dollar to begin with, and top dollar is going to way more than exceed what I cost to work with. So why don't we just do the right thing and kind of keep you moving in the right direction here, if that's okay with you? Ooh, yeah, right? Protect the house. But also, guess what? It does cost you money to do all that stuff. Last I checked, Matterport tours are not free. Last I checked, listing photography is not free. Paying for marketing is not free, right? Retouching your photos, not free. High-end HDR photography on a listing, not free. All that stuff is not free. So you don't have to just by default feel like you need to break down, right? Whatever it is. And obviously, what you charge for a listing is what you charge. We're not setting commission here, guys. I know that. All right. If anyone's watching this. All right. The puppy dog close. This one is so hilarious. Has anyone ever been Lexi, one time, a long time ago, before she knew me, actually, she fostered some kittens. Don't ever do this, by the way. This is what I've learned. You cannot foster puppies or kittens. It doesn't work, right? You foster them, and then you what? Keep them. This is how this works. This is why the foster programs exist. I'm convinced it's a sales pitch. It's just to get people to adopt and take these animals. So Lexi did this. she had these, and actually one of them did get adopted, but then she kept 3 of the 4 cats that she was fostering. Two now. One of them apparently got taken by the coyotes a number of years back. But guess what? This is what the puppy dog close is. It's like, you're not sure if you want to buy the puppy. Well, listen, why don't you think about it? Take him home for the evening, cuddle up with him on the couch, let him lick your face, and then good luck bringing him back, right? That's the puppy dog close in a nutshell. That helps you get the mindset on it. It's like, kind of try on the thing, realize how much you love it, right? Why do they let you test drive cars? You test drive a Cadillac, it'll make your butt smile, that whole thing. So you get in there and you're like rolling around in that leather seat and you're like, holy moly, I don't ever want to get out of this thing. It feels like I'm driving in a Barca Lounger, right? And then guess what you do? You buy the car or whatever your flavor is. So let's look at how this works. Once the client experiences the benefits firsthand, this is why software companies, what do? Free trial period. It's the same thing. This is a puppy dog close. That's what they're doing. It's a classic sales approach that allows you to try it. Try the thing. You'll see how much you like it, right? So instead of a quick walkthrough, maybe offer later than a more relaxed extended private showing. Lexi and I actually did this when we were selling our lake house in Arizona. Our folks came over. We were there. We put them on our boat. We took them on a cruise. We had champagne. We hung out. They got to see the house under the sparkly lights. It's a different experience. We gave them an experience, not a tour. A tour is like, an experience sells something, right? Oh man, I want that experience again. So we gave them a sense of the lifestyle of living at that property. So think about some of the properties that you've been trying to sell, maybe something that's in your inventory right now, where an extended experience or a different kind of an experience, or maybe just later in the day, showing up when the evening lights are on. Maybe the house has up lighting. It makes the house just sparkle. It's dynamite at night, or right when sunset's happening. So plan a different experience for that person to really try on the shoes, or to take the puppy home for a minute, right? And have that emotional connection to the experience of living there. This works well for buyers. Same thing works for listings. We can actually have somebody go ahead and sign the listing paperwork. I'll take it with me, but we won't put let's not go ahead and put it live until you're really comfortable. You give me the heads up. Or let's go ahead and fill out the seller's property disclosure statement together. We'll at least have that on file. That gets us a little ways down the road. What have they really done? They've emotionally committed to working with you, and they do not want to have to do all that stupid paperwork ever again. Emotionally, they are now connected to the outcome, and that outcome is connected to working with you because they don't want to repeat the pain that it took to get there. It's a beautiful thing. Or arrange a second showing during a time that lets the buyers experience the home in a more personal way. Like I said, sunset, a weekend morning, maybe have them go visit. Like if you're the buyer agent, have them visit you at a local coffee shop, something kind of, if they're fun and artsy, have them meet you at a cute, artsy, fun, cool local coffee shop. If they love dogs, it's got a little dog park right next to it. Go to the dog park. Hey, bring your dog with. You're giving them an experience, not a tour. It's a way different way to get that emotional connection to a property. This works in particular on the buyer side, right? Because we're trying to get them to buy the puppy. All right, works very, very well. Now, I will tell you the next one I'm going to cover, and I got some stuff in the chat. I want to make sure I'm not missing it. Driving in a Barca Lounger, yeah, exactly. After the test drive, the Honda salesman, this is Joanne, a Honda salesman told my son to go ahead and drive the car. All of the other dealerships, he looked at other cars, he bought the Honda. That is hilarious. I love it. Yeah, absolutely. Right. It's the greatest way to get somebody to do something is to allow them to try it first. Right. This is why, in fact, most consultants or coaches will give you a free coaching session. Why? Because they want you to feel the power of that. And if they can't demonstrate great power in that initial consultation or whatever it is, then you're not going to be compelled. Plus, it's also an at-bat for them to continue to sell, right? This works for CPAs, works for attorneys, works for all sorts of things. First consultation is free. What does that say? I get a free chance to sell you. That's a way different. We don't use that verbiage. That doesn't work in sales. All right, so the next one is called conditional. And conditional simply, conditionalizing a lot of times can be negative if you talk to psychologists or therapists, right? Well, if I do it, will you do, it's very tit for tat kind of a thing. Turns out in sales, it actually is fairly effective, however. And you have to be thoughtful about how you use it. So I'll show you a couple frames or approaches that are very effective. So we're going to try and cover a lot today so you guys get a lot of options, strategies that you can use for this stuff. Conditional close, the most common frame is if I, will you, blah. I like using this the most with other agents. I'm going to say this a lot with other agents. When I'm negotiating a deal, I'm not dealing, if I'm representing a buyer, I'm not dealing directly with who? The seller. I'm dealing with who? Probably the only person I ever get to talk to, the listing agent. If I'm the listing agent, do I get to talk directly to the buyers? Only if I'm representing them too. But generally, I'm talking to an agent who's running intermediation. They're buffering between me and the client. So I have to ask them questions. Most of the time, and actually we just heard about this from a lot of our top producers in the last panel, a lot of negotiation can happen with hypotheticalizing and conditionalizing in those conversations with the other agent, so we start to understand where boundaries are without over-disclosing. You never want to over-disclose or release any information that could harm your client. However, there is some chance here to have a sophisticated conversation with this other agent and understand where we might be able to head, partly so that we're not wasting our client's time, their client's time, et cetera. So when they ask for a concession, agree but close the deal immediately. Here's a scenario. Let me give you a scenario. This helps. The buyer's agent asks the listing agent if the seller will accept a lower price. If I'm the listing agent, I'll say, listen, if I can get my sellers to agree to that price, will you guys get a clean offer locked in today? That's an if I, will you. Now, what are they going to say? Because they want me to do the thing that they just said. Disproportionately, that other agent's going to say, yes, I can get that done. Great. I like asking, are you sure? Because I'm a turd. But I want them to say yes more than once because I want them to feel hyper obligated to go do it. Now, what's interesting is in that moment, the other agent will actually work 2, 3, 5 times as hard to go get that outcome. Why? What am I really doing? I'm positioning my sellers for success. I don't know if the sellers will agree to that price. I said if. It's conditional. I'll talk to the sellers and I'm going to be fully transparent with them. I'll say, listen, I've got the other agent in a good position. Sounds like if we'll do this, they will come in with a clean offer otherwise and get us locked in today. But I need to see if you guys are comfortable with this first. And if not, we can always walk away. So I'm going to tell my sellers what's up, by the way. Full transparency, always. However, when I'm working the other agent, I'm working. That's my job. And I'm not just selling my client on working with me. I'm selling the other agent on working their side of the deal. I don't get to talk to the buyers. If I could, it'd be way easier. Right? Agents know how to buffer a little bit more. So if I, will you can use it with clients though. If I send over the contract, will you take a look at that tonight, or will you get it signed up this evening? Or if I send this to you digitally, will you get it back to me before 5 so I can get that to my transaction coordinator? Do you see how easy that is? And I can say it so comfortably and naturally without it sounding like I've got them in a headlock, right? It's not about that. It's not about controlling people. It's not about over control. It is about creating alignment and reducing friction. So people are comfortable to act. Act. That's what we want them to do. Act, right? A lot of people sitting in your pipeline doing nothing, super boring, and you don't make any money, right? So that's not very good. Keep using tie downs. You hear that, right? All right. The reverse close. This is effectively, and I'm going to skip to the end on this one, it's really easy to understand. Is there any reason why you wouldn't? Is there any reason why you wouldn't? Might there be a reason? By the way, yes, they might pop off with a reason. Yes, because of blah, blah, blah. Okay, great. And I like putting these in order with isolating the objection. We'll do that in a second. So here's how this works in combination. I say, listen, Ed, is there any reason why you wouldn't go ahead and get us listed today, or get this contract signed today, or sign this buyer agent agreement so that we can go ahead and start taking a look at properties, or whatever, right? Is there any reason why you wouldn't? Now, maybe he's got a reason. He says, well, I need to wait for so-and-so to sign off on this too. I don't make these decisions alone. So then I go into a classic sales approach, which is called isolate the objection, in which I say, oh, okay, well, other than waiting for that person, is there any other reason why you wouldn't want to get to work right away? What am I looking for? How many objections do we need to get over before we can agree to work together? Agents are notorious for selling a bunch of crap that the person's not asking for. Well, let me explain my commission. Dude, they didn't just ask about commission. Why are you talking about that? Like, You are bringing it, what's going to happen is you're going to create 10 objections where there were none. So ask, is there any reason why you wouldn't want to go ahead and get listed today? Well, we had talked about waiting until beginning of November. Okay, other than waiting until the beginning of November, is there any other reason why you wouldn't be able to get started right away if you were to decide to? Well, no. Okay, well, let's talk about that really quickly. And then I can give them a market swing that will help them to understand why that might actually cost them money to wait until November. And if things cost people money, guess what? They want the free version. Free version, work with me now. We can position all of that. But we can't do it if we don't say, is there any reason why you wouldn't want to blah, 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 and then saying other than blah, blah, blah. When they give their response, other than objection, is there any other reason? Check that out. Okay, hopefully that helps. Is there any reason why you wouldn't? Is there any other reason? Is there any reason why you wouldn't? Is there any other reason? Other than blah, 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 is there any other reason? Isolate the objection. This is super duper effective stuff. And I know that these frameworks seem kind of be basic, but you may be thinking, well, normally I just show people my listing presentation and then I just kind of look at them awkwardly, right? Or no, I'm just kidding. You say, do you want to pick me? I love you. Do you love me? That's fine. I will tell you, when you're being thoughtful about it, about your approach, and you know exactly what your standard operating procedure is for these things, you tend to get a disproportionately more favorable outcome. And I have, over time, taught these strategies to some agents where they didn't really know how to sell their way out of a paper bag. They started implementing some of this stuff at a kind of a B basic level and had some amazing results, like amazing, amazing results. This stuff works. It doesn't work because I came up with it. It works because it's always worked. I just learned it, and now I'm here to help you guys to learn it too. So it's awesome. Or to review it if you already knew it. A lot of you are like, I know this stuff, Jeff. That's great. I love that. Review is always a good thing. That's how we anchor in and remember what we've forgotten. Okay, the next one is called a scale close. I love this guy. We forget about this one. It's a classic sales approach, and it's just we ask them on a scale of 1 to 10. We do that. You see this all the time on internet surveys. They're really actually having you qualify yourself for a sales pipeline. All right, on a scale of 1 to 10, how ready are you guys to move forward? Get yourself listed with us today. Oh, I don't know. Maybe like by the way, almost everyone will say what number. Does anyone know? I want to see if anyone knows what number everyone says. Like the same number. It doesn't matter how well you've done. What's the number? 7. Joanne Graham says 7. It is 7. That's awesome. It's 7. It's hilarious. It's just, what's funny is if you ask people to pick a number 1 to 10, almost everyone says 7. 1 to 5, almost everyone says 3. It's almost always an odd number. Interestingly, it doesn't really matter, but I just want you to know the psychology is funny. All humans are the same, right? And so here's what's fun. Then congratulate them or celebrate that number. Doesn't matter. You don't have to be kind of off put by it. 7 doesn't mean bad. 7 means 7. It has no meaning. It means better than 5, by the way. If they say 2, you should go ahead and leave. Let's be like, well, the street lights are on. I got to go home. It's dinner time. And then head on out. So, but if they say 7, all you have to say is, fantastic. Now, what would it take for us to get you to a 10 today? I learned this approach from Zig Ziglar. I've used it like a trillion times, and it is astoundingly effective. That person will literally disclose to you in their next statements how to close them. They're going to give you their blueprint to being closed. So if I was to ask this, I see Ashley on the call. If I was to ask this to Ashley, hey, Ashley, on a scale of 1 to 10, how ready are you to go ahead and get this buyer agency stuff out of the way and we can go out and look at some awesome houses? She's like, well, a 7. We got a few things we need to think about. Listen, I totally understand. Now, what would it take for us to get you from a 7 to 10 today? Well, we just need to talk about it a little bit more. Fantastic. Then what I could do is I could say, now, is there any reason why you wouldn't want to just go out and take a look at some houses today? Reverse close. And then she tells me, well, we really don't know how much it's going to cost. Okay, well, other than the financing and understanding that piece of it, is there any other reason why you wouldn't want to go ahead and get started today? Isolate the objection. What did I just use? I used the scale, followed by the reverse, followed by isolating the objection. Then I could go ahead and use an assumptive close, lock it up with a tie down, right? Don't you think? Wouldn't that make sense? Next thing we know, we're signing that agreement and we're going out to look at property. I just want you guys to know, you start stacking these things in. It's why I'm going to give you a good list of them. This is why I keep a list of closes. I have my own list. It's much longer than this. I know all of my closes, and all I need is the title, and I know how they work. Very effective. And it doesn't take long to study. Just put them on little index cards, keep them in your car for a while, and then put them on a list. What's fascinating is your close rate will go through the roof. Then all you have to do is start increasing the number of conversations you have. And again, not about manipulating people, just about understanding how to reduce friction. Because we can increase friction. Here's how you increase friction. I've got this contract, it's really uncomfortable, and it says that you're going to have to pay me no matter what. And it's going to come out of your pocket. It's going to hurt a lot. And I'm just telling you right now, it's very scary, terrifying, in fact. Do you want to sign it? I just increased the hell out of that friction. No, I don't want to sign that. Sounds awful. How do I reduce that friction? Like this. There's been some changes to the industry. They're designed to protect you as the consumer. They create radical clarity and transparency in the entire process. We can go through it and explain every little bit of it. Right? Always a good thing to protect the consumer, wouldn't you agree? It's great that this regulation has been put in place to make sure that I have to be transparent, you have to be in an understanding. This is a really good thing, don't you think? Tie down, tie down. On a scale of 1 to 10, how ready are you to go ahead and get this thing signed up? We got to do it anyway. Get out there and look at some houses. I'm excited. 7. Awesome. What would it take to get you to a 10 today? I'm giving you guys a quick run through of how you stacked these things in a row. It's not very hard to do. Well, I don't really want to do it today. Great. Would you be offended if I checked in with you tomorrow and see if we can go ahead and get things started then? I don't want you to miss out on this prime buying season. Would you be offended if the offended close, prime buying season? I just created urgency, time-based urgency. I want you to know this stuff comes very naturally when you've studied it. I can stack these, stack these, stack these, stack these. So if I can have a conversation with somebody, I know I can close them. That means all I need is the conversation. The close rate is going to be through the roof, 95, 8%, something like that. Getting the conversation might be the harder part. So that's where you start running out of leads. And then that's a different problem and a different call. All right, let's go back to this. We've got a few more. Needs-based closed. Speaking of needs, focus on addressing specific needs. This is important, by the way, the client's specific needs and how your solution meets them. This is why you have to understand your client's specific needs. If you're not asking questions during your buyer agency agreement conversations or your listing agreement conversations, we have agreement conversations on both now, it's awesome. Guess what? You won't understand what their needs are, which means you can't anchor back to their why. Why are they doing this matters a lot. People want to buy a house. Why? Emotionally, what is the meaning of this purchase for them? What need does it satisfy? And it needs to be a need, not a want. So here's what's interesting. The questions that you ask dictate the responses that you get. If I say to Krista, why do you want a house? She'll tell me why she wants a house. Well, I want a bigger backyard, and I want a nice kitchen, and I want a nice roof, and I want to impress my friends, or whatever it is. Doesn't matter. Who cares? Everyone's got their own wants. But if I say, now, why do you guys need to buy a house right now? What's interesting is it's assumptive because I just assume that they do need to buy a house right now. So I baked that into the question. But when I ask that question, they will give me different responses. Well, we've outgrown our last house. That's a need, right? Got 3 kids sleeping in the primary bedroom with us. Got to get those into their own rooms. Holy guacamole, we're all sleeping in the living room at this point, right? That's not good. We need a bigger yard. We have 3 Dobermans. I don't know what we were thinking. We've got a tiny little backyard. It's not working. Or we have no yard. Not working. We need a fenced yard. Not working. That's a need. It's different. We need, too many dang kids, Tyler. That's funny. So we need more space, less space. We need to scale up, scale down. We need to move to a new location based on a job. We need, not want. Hugely different. We can bring people emotionally around to their wants, but we can anchor them emotionally the best to their needs. People will act immediately based on a need. They will act when they feel like it based on a want. I'll just tell you that. I want to buy a Jeep Wrangler. I'm not going to do it right now. I don't need it. I do. I think it'd be awesome. I'd love that. But I'm not going to do it. Just be throwing good money after bad, and I never drive anywhere anyway. It's not a need. But I got a guy fixing a pole on our property here. That needed to get fixed. The thing was going to fall over, right? So that's a need. It had to happen right away. So immediate purchase. All right, let's go back in. So you mentioned that you need blah, blah, blah. Here's how we can help, or here's how this could help, or here's how this solution could help, or here's how acting now could help, or here's why we need to go ahead and act now. But when I say you mentioned blah, 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 I'm going to mention their need right there. And then I can follow it up with wherever we need to go. So you mentioned you need to get to, Minneapolis by next month based on that job. Sounds like we should go ahead and align the pricing strategy with where the market's headed, so we can get you guys sold and get you up there as fast as possible. I'd hate to see you miss your first day. Geez Louise. I'm anchoring back to their need. You have to remember their needs, which means you have to what? Ask about their needs. So needs-based close only works, by the way, when you've asked about their needs, but I want you to know it does work exceedingly well. Same on the buy side. You mentioned you needed to get this purchase done before the kids head back to school. And geez Louise, the clock's ticking, baby. Or before Christmas break or before the holidays, because your family's going to come down here and you need a place for everyone to stay. Let's make sure we get this done. And then I like to, by the way, run the whole timeline. Well, we don't really need to buy a house until January. Okay, well, the average closing window or escrow period is about 45 days. I find the average client's taken a month, maybe 2 months sometimes to identify the perfect house. So now we're at 3.5 months, and today's September 25th. So it sounds like we should have gone ahead and gotten started about last week. Let's get started today, guys. This is awesome. We'll still get you there. Don't worry. We'll push it right along. I'll give you all my time and attention. What did I just do? I turned January into today. I want you to know, based on a need, you can do that. Back off with timelines and you can find it. Okay, you have to practice that. Practice that. Somebody just put something in the chat and I missed it. If something critical comes up or a question, somebody said, here we go. Joanne gave me one. She said, you hated missing your granddaughter's first 3 birthdays. This offer could have you there by Christmas. Now, are you going to miss Christmas and possibly her 4th birthday, just over 15 grand? What's it worth to you to be with your granddaughter this Christmas? Absolutely, right? Now, again, how you ask that, being pleasant and not alert. Are you going to miss your granddaughter's birthday? You can't do it that way. No, I don't want to work with you anymore. You're scary. Versus, oh gosh, guys, I feel for you. I always touch my heart on this one because that's a universal sign of empathy and care, understanding. I have to think through this stuff. I'm not a psychopath, but I do. I think just as a guy, I have to some of that stuff I have to emulate to remind myself it's super helpful for the other person to see those emblems that mean I care, I'm thinking about your needs, etc. For me, you do it a lot, and so it starts to become kind of rote, but you need to practice, and I mean this, you need to practice being consistent with this approach, and so being thoughtful over it just means you'll be consistent. Instead of being intuitive and then being like, why did it work that one time and then it didn't work that other time? Maybe that one time is the time that you touched your heart and then you forgot every other time. Oops. It works, by the way, this one. It's very effective. Okay. Works a lot better than touching their heart, by the way. All right. So little jokes today. All right. Let's go share. Here we go. We're back. Needs-based close. We got 2 more. Financial close. This one is where you break down financial benefits. We're going to go 2 directions with this because I want you to understand. Zig Ziglar also calls, there's a version of this called translation. I'm going to cover it in a moment. This is where you break down the financial benefits or savings to justify the cost, right? We do it all the time with for sale by owners. I love it. Fantastic. Now, help me to understand. Listen, I'm not saying you guys won't sell it yourself. I'm saying it may take 3 to 5 times as long. We just know that based on all of the data that's available in the marketplace, of which there's a ton now. So you'll get it sold. You probably make a little bit less on the sales price, but granted, you wouldn't have agency. However, I'm concerned, what's it costing for you guys to hold this property between principal, interest, taxes, insurance, repairs, landscape, maintenance, utilities, et cetera? All the stuff. Holy guacamole, that was a long list. Well, let's break it down, right? So you're spending $10,000 a month to own this bad boy. It's going to take you 5 months to get it sold. That's $50,000. Or my fee is blah, which equates to da, which is 30 or 50 or whatever grand less, right? You see what I'm doing. I'm going to set up the differential. That's a financial close. Works very well. I don't break it down. It's very matter of fact. Just like looking at the numbers. Oh gosh, help me. It's like you're sitting next to them and you're playing financial advisor for a minute and you're helping them to make an informed decision in their best interest. I'm not saying spending money is fun. I'm saying sometimes spending money is how you save money, right? Okay. The translation example is really fun. This is where you make big numbers seem small and approachable, or small numbers seem big and exciting, depending on what your need is in the sales encounter. And this one took me like a long time to be able to understand, but I want you guys to understand it because it's been super powerful for me. So translation works this way. If I'm dealing with let's say a price reduction, I'm talking with my seller. I do not say, let's do a $10,000 price reduction. I might say, let's do a 2% price reduction. Or would you consider a 2% price? Or the market seems to indicate that if we came down about 2%, we'd be in line with where everybody else is. That's going to give us a fighting chance at least. Make us competitive again. Start getting showings. Now, 2% versus $10,000. If I'm having to take less money as the seller, do I want to hear 2 or do I want to hear 10,000? Which one sounds bigger? So translation-wise, I'm going to use a percentage there. If I'm on the buyer's side, I'm not going to say, hey, I just saved you 2%. Nope. I might say, hey, I just saved you $10,000, guys. Woohoo! What are you going to do with all the extra money? You taking the family to Disney? Do I get to come? That's great. It's a different approach, right? Because for them, they're focused on dollars saved. They want the number to sound big. Guess what, though? If I'm working with a buyer and they're worried about an interest rate, and I want to help to contextualize that, might I then make that a dollars per month? My favorite was day, right? For a while, it was about $65 per month per $10,000 lent. Okay, so $65 per month per $10,000 lent. But if you understand that, $65 per day across 30 days is about $2.16 per day. $2.20, $2. Right around $2 a day. So now here's where it gets fun. $10,000 more to buy this house is $2 a day. Listen, guys, do you have anything you're doing right now? You're buying a cup of coffee at Starbucks. I just want to make sure that that cup of coffee is worth more to you than the home of your dreams. We can get this done. We just need to find $2 a day in your budget and we can make it work. You hear the difference in that versus you guys need to fork up 10 grand right now. Whoa, that sounds terrifying. $2 a day does not sound terrifying. So hopefully you see the difference in that, right? This is how we can really translate that number to something that's affordable. And affordability is a big deal. That's why every time you ever go to buy a car, what do they say? Well, listen, we can talk about price in a minute, but let's figure out what you want to pay monthly, right? What are they trying to do? They're going to affordability based on your budget. We can do this in real estate. We just don't do it that way. But translating it down, especially when you're trying to get a buyer to buy up or a seller to come down, this works really, 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 really well. Super effective. Hope you use it. So the translation is making big numbers sound small or small numbers sound big, depending on your needs or particularly what the client needs to hear. And then also we could say over time, this will save you X per month, per year, et cetera. This could be like they're looking at a house, but this one has a solar panel on it, so they pay nothing for electricity. That's awesome. Which might more than cover the cost of the that you were worried about. You wanted a home warranty. We can get that because they've got solar, so you're not even having to pay electric. No big deal. All comes out in the wash. You guys are covered financially. Okay? And last one today, the fear of loss close. And this one is, I did break down all of the seasonal. This is where we basically talk about costs to that person. It could cost you a lot. By the way, I always use conditional verbiage. Doesn't mean it will. There's always a way around something, but it's not. Generally speaking, we all agreed earlier that now is a better time to act, and particularly in sales, now is a better time to close than any time. So we're going to highlight risk of losses of not taking action now. That's really it. So what do people say? I'm going to wait to list in winter. I'm going to wait to list in summer. I'm going to wait to buy in winter. I'm going to wait to buy in summer, or next year, or next decade, or next millennia, or whatever it is. I don't care. I gave you the classic ones right now. I'm waiting to list in winter. Okay, well, listen, waiting to list in winter could cost you a lot, though, because there are fewer buyers then. Is that something you've considered? Or sounds like we might want to think about doing it a little bit sooner just to keep you competitive and make sure you get the most bang for the buck out of this thing, don't you think? That's better than, okay, can I call you back later? Right? Hand you to the next agent. Whoops. I'm waiting to list in summer. Same deal, except how are we repositioning it? By the way, screenshot this one. I find agents have the hardest time remembering these. They're really easy, but they're hard to remember is my point. So write them down if you need to write them down. Waiting to list in summer could cost you a lot because there will be so much more competition with other listings just crowding the marketplace. Could choke yours out like a weed. I'd hate that. Let's list now in winter when, when there's less competition. I just want you to know there's always a reason to, right? There's a reason not to as well. We're just not iterating those. Waiting to buy in winter. Waiting to buy in winter could cost you a lot because there just won't be as many options on the market as there are in summer. So let's go ahead and do it now. Or I'm waiting to buy in summer. Oh, listen, I understand that, but waiting to buy in summer could cost you a lot because there will be so much more competition out there with other buyers all crowding the marketplace, making multiple offers. You have to end up paying $10,000 over for every house. Let's go ahead and do it now when you have less competition. Do you see that? I made the same exact objection in every direction for every case used, using the fear of loss clause. This is how this works, by the way. Massively effective. This is probably the most classic usage, and I would recommend you screenshot that and screenshot this. Here's your summary from the day. These are all the closes that we just hit. So if you wanted to just kind of have a little reminder and start to go through them in your mind, and you can circle back and get to the part. They're a little out of order, but might get you there. This stuff is super powerful and effective. And what's really nice to understand is that, again, and I want to reiterate this, great closing ability should never, ever mean that you're doing anything that isn't in the best interest of the client. The better you get at closing, I think it's like with great power, there comes great responsibility, right? Like as you develop this superpower, it's your ability to lower somebody's resistance to doing the right thing. You should never have somebody do the wrong thing, right? I've had someone do that to me. It's always just bad. And so we don't want to do that. But ultimately, if you can see why this is in their best interest and they can see why it's in their best interest, they're just trying to kind of get to it and feel bound up. People have a hard time making decisions. It's tough. Our job as salespeople actually is just to reduce the resistance, the friction in that moment and make it more comfortable. So hopefully that was really helpful. Gosh, I went all the way to the end zone on this one today. Talked through the whole thing, and I appreciate you guys sticking with me. I absolutely love this stuff. So if you want to follow up, reach out to me through social media or wherever, and we'll have a good time talking about it. But in the meantime, thank you guys for being here today. Really love it. And I will talk to everybody soon. Thanks, guys.